With just 10 days left in 2024, I asked my Instagram followers if they thought I could finish this stack of books before the year's end. Most of them actually believed in me, which some of that was probably just people being nice, but also because I kind of have a reputation of really liking books and being a reader, being a little nerdy, that sort of thing. And people probably thought, no problem. I feel like I have the pretty common trajectory of the gifted kid that liked reading and books growing up, but somewhere down the line, a line which probably coincides with the rise of smartphone usage, you just kind of lost that spark and the ability to concentrate for that long, to be able to read a bunch of books, and it just dwindled and dwindled and dwindled. But 2024 actually proved to be an uptick in my reading, the first one that I had pretty much in years. And I read more in 2024 than I had in a really long time. I was finally transitioning from the all too common hobby of collecting books, which for a lot of people was different from reading books, to actually reading the books that I was collecting and being more plugged into what publishers were talking about, what books are coming out, what authors people are liking, and stuff like that. This all started happening for me starting at the beginning of 2024, but really picked up in the latter half, culminating in this challenge of me finishing all these books before the end of the year. And it was probably somewhere around a little under 1,000 pages that I had to read in the next 10 days, which for some people is not a lot, but like I said, that's more than I would typically read in that period of time. However, it's the end of the year. Of course, I was not of course, some people have to work at the end of the year. I don't, but I didn't have to work. I was in the house a lot. It was the holidays. And I actually did end up meeting my goal. I saw my revitalized interest in reading as an opportunity to build a community online. Obviously, BookTok is super big. Bookstagram had been a thing for a while, and I hadn't really participated in any of that. I feel like I follow a few Bookstagrammers, but I was less into BookTok and TikTok in general before last year. But I was like, you know what? I'm reading more. This could be a good avenue for content for me. I'm trying to expand. I'm trying to, build more, do more, and all that. And that really came to a head at the end of last year, because there's so much opportunity in end of the year content for anything that you cover, because you can do your best of list, your favorites list, superlatives, which I did last year, all types of different stuff. So it actually ended up sneaking up on me, and I did a bunch of that stuff scrambling at the end of the year, trying to get my foot in the door. I also felt like there was an avenue for someone like me in the BookTok community, because if you're familiar with BookTok, the two, I would say 3 really big buckets that people seem to fall in terms of genre are romance. Romance is huge on BookTok. I see a lot of thriller and I see a lot of fantasy. Now, my motto, especially after seeing what I read last year, has been I read a little bit of everything. That's really largely true. The only genres that I really can't say that I touch are thriller, horror stuff, just because y'all not gonna have me looking over my shoulder in the comfort of my own home. But largely I try to read everything. But my favorite genre and what I will read the most of by far is literary fiction. And there is some literary fiction stuff on BookTok, but it's not as big as other genres, and any of the other genres aren't as big as the 3 that I mentioned before. So by the end of last year, I was doing book hauls, I was doing TBR lists, and these book stats on things that I was reading. I did a 24-hour readathon, which was a massive failure with my friend. I also have a book club that I do every summer for my podcast, Classically Black. We've been doing that for a couple years, but that was another avenue. And I was, of course, doing book reviews of the books I was reading as well. I did a whole roundup of all the books I read in 2024 in a video, I think on my main channel, not this one. But I also tried reading urban fiction, which gave me my first mini viral video on BookTok, which I'll link in the description. So that got me some traction there. But as much as I was trying to break into the BookTok space, I felt like there was one pretty big issue for me, which was that I just don't read that much. Coming off of a big reading year like 2024, I was ready to go into 2025 guns blazing, okay? I don't usually have reading goals in terms of how many books I'm going to read, but I do keep a TBR. Especially my next like 2 or 3 books are usually pretty cemented in being like queued up. I also do themed reads, like I try to read something for Black History Month, or or I want to read more of this author this year, or I'm gonna reread X, Y, and Z this year, stuff like that. So 2025 was booked up. I already had my first couple reads on deck, all of that ready to go. I am still recovering from the reading slump that has been 2025. Okay, I read, like I said, hundreds of pages in the lead up to 2025, and it seems like as soon as the clock struck midnight, everything was just gone. What I can give myself grace for is that January was a fucking doozy. Okay, I live in Los Angeles. The fires were happening, the presidential inauguration happened, and I chose to read a book that reimagined the future of the United States. I go more into this book in my previous video on this channel, and why it pretty much ruined me for all of the books this year. But it was just very, very depressing, and I feel like that really set the tone for the year for me, and it just ended up just screwing literally everything up. I can't even stress how, like, I don't want to say devastating, because this is not like a tragedy that I haven't read, but I just had such big plans, and I just have never ever been able to get back on track with it this year. I also tried to start a couple of other books with no results. I hadn't finished them. I finished my first book of the year in early March, and my second book of the year in late April. It is now late June, and I have yet to finish another book this year. I am in the middle of one right now that I know I will finish. We'll see when, but you can kind of see how this is an issue for somebody that's trying to make book content. And you can even see from my TikTok, I mean, I've kind of shifted focus, not entirely off of books. I want to get this going again, but I've been indulging my other interests, namely anime, and trying to get into that side of the algorithm. And I've also like started this channel to get more into like pop culture stuff, and sharing like what I'm watching and what I'm listening to and all that sort of stuff. But reading was always supposed to be a big part of my content online, and it seems like this getting off to a bad start this year has really just like completely blown that out of the water. And if you know anything about BookTok, you know that a lot of BookTok creators are like mega readers, at least the ones that I see, because there's a constant churn out of content. Now, if you want to get creative with it, you can get many pieces of content out of reading one book, but I see so many like roundup videos, like books that are for this mood or for that mood, or books that will make you cry, or books that this and that, and I'm just like, I don't even read enough books to make a list like that, like, and to have like multiple lists like that without like many books being repeated. And there's nothing wrong with books being repeated, but a lot of these people are reading like 100 books a year, sometimes more. Like, the only thing I can give them on that is some people are full-time book creators, and that's all they do, you know. And even if I were a full-time content creator, it wouldn't be a full-time book content creator. There's also like other types of content that I make, so that's the only thing I could see. But there are people who are not full-time creators that are reading 50, 70, 100, 150 books a year, and I'm just like, how are you doing that? And I think that that's just never gonna be me. Like, that's just not the goal that I have for myself, and I'm really curious as to how things are going to evolve for, you know, like content, because I don't see myself really breaking into the part of the algorithm that is like hardcore, you know, like book lovers, because as much as I do love books, it's just like I don't think I can keep up and satiate people who consume that sort of content. They're gonna get bored because I'm gonna keep talking about the same books, or I'm gonna start talking about other shit that I like. There's also the rumors going around on BookTok right now about people doing fake reviews, people not actually fully reading the books that they're recommending on their pages. And I can't really speak to if there's any merit to that. I looked it up to see if anybody had actually like reported on it besides like people making TikToks about it. And I didn't see anything in my like initial look. I looked quickly, so there could be something buried in there that didn't come up for me. But so I can't really say whether or not I believe that, especially because I'm a slow reader. Some people are faster readers that could very well just be blowing through these books. But at the same time, I do know the internet to be a place where people make shit up, so there's that. But that's just never been me and will never be me. But there's a lot that goes into creating content, creating book content, but just content in general that I feel like I'm not going to subscribe to, and maybe that will impact how I do. I hope not, but maybe it will. One of the biggest things that falls into that category is having boundaries. Like, I could force myself to like drag my heels through books. I could try to force myself out of this reading slump, or maybe I couldn't, I don't know. But I just know me. I know I wouldn't be comprehending everything that I'm reading. I know that I wouldn't be enjoying myself. And that's the number one thing, is like reading has been a hobby for me since I was little. And I knew that when I started making content like about books, that I was like, I can't sacrifice that. Like, I'm not going to be too open about my TBR or too strict about it or too like, you know, anal about a schedule, simply because I am a mood reader. I'm a little bit in the middle because I do have a TBR, but I'm also a mood reader, or I would say a binge reader rather. And I will go long periods of time where I'm not really reading. The exception to that was last year, where I thought I was getting more consistent. But I knew that I didn't want to give too much to an audience in terms of how I'm reading and what I'm reading and when and how much, simply because I didn't want to be beholden to anyone. I had somebody ask me, hey, when are you going to start a book club? And like I said, I have a summer book club for my podcast, but that's a little different. It's just once a year. We read a book. We split into 4 or 5 weeks, and that's it. But there are some BookTok creators that have a book club that's recurring, or they have a book of the month and all that. And I just feel like, I know myself, and I know that if I had a bigger following and I told them, hey, I'm gonna read this book with you guys, I would have to keep up with it, whether I liked it or not. But I don't ever want to get to the point where I feel burnt out, or I feel like I'm not enjoying reading anymore, or like, oh damn, I have to read this for my followers or whatever. Like, it's still something that I definitely want to keep more insular. I want to keep for me, but I do want to share like when I can. And I honestly feel like that's how people get caught up. Like, when people are faking reviews or making shit up to go viral in any sort of content, you know, there are people who do that. And there's a lot of pressure to keep up with the algorithm and to keep yourself on the top of people's minds. And I feel like boundaries really melt away in content creation because it feels more personal. You really do have to kind of feed that parasocial relationship a safe amount. But that's something that I've just like, maybe because I'm late-ish to the game. I'm not late because I've had a podcast for 7 years, but like, that was really the only content that I was doing before a couple years ago. But maybe because I've seen it play out, I've seen how the parasocial relationships go, I've seen people post shit online that I'm like, why do I know that about you? That I'm just like really cognizant of that. Like, I don't want what's going on in my phone to really affect my life and how I feel about things that I was doing before content and that I will still be doing after content. So I kind of do and don't know what's next for me. Like, I do because I'm like, I'm finna do what I feel like doing pretty much. But like, I think the purpose of this video was to just kind of talk through the extremes that I've been seeing in book content creation, and to just kind of figure out like my place in it as somebody who has no desire to like conform to that. I think that, you know, liking books and being a reader can be a pretty big part of someone's personality, just like any other interest. But when you come into it and you see like oh, y'all are like really, really into this. It may feel like there's no sort of like in between. And obviously, like, that's on the internet. Like, in the real world, like, people know, I know a lot of people in the real world that just straight up don't read at all. But I'm more so talking about like on the internet. And I'm just trying to see like how that fits into my life, because I do, like, I want that to be part of what I do online, but also like I'm just never gonna be that girl that's reading 100 books a year. It's never gonna give that over here. I don't know what to tell you. But if you like films and TV and anime and books and music and stuff like that, you know, this is probably the place for you. Anyway, here are my social media handles. You can follow me if you want, including on TikTok, where I will sometimes be talking about books. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and click the bell notification so you can get a notification every time I get off my butt and post the video. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time.